Good morning, evening, or afternoon. So today I'm going to be talking about what is CSS Float. Previously we had Flexbox, the kind of newest and greatest technology for CSS. There's also CSS Grid. And floats are kind of an older one, a relic from a while ago. They're a CSS property that is meant to move images inside of blocks of text. But it became one of the most common ways to create multiple column layouts on pages. With the arrival of CSS frameworks like Bootstrap and Foundation that used kind of inline and block elements and margin padding to create grid items to lay out 12 columns mostly and make them responsive. And other newer CSS technologies such as Flexbox and Grid, Float has gone away, thankfully, and it is known as a legacy technique. In this image here from CSS Tricks, you'll see like commonly was used to float left and float stuff right. So you'll have the main content over here, a sidebar there, or two equal columns. The float property, what it actually does is it removes this element from the document flow, and the other elements will be displayed right beside it. And this kind of led to some confusing behaviors, like stuff would collapse and elements would move right up next to the float or overwrite the element that we floated. And there's an additional hacks that we had to add into it called clear fix. We need to clear the float. And it was pretty common to have a clear fix hack or a clear fix utility class in your code base. And it involved inserting kind of generated content after the actual box, so it would expand. And it would behave the same as if you created a div element below it on items or a block level element. And yeah, with today's CSS Grid and Flexbox, we thankfully don't need to position web pages with Float anymore. And the only instance I can think of where I would use Float is if I was working in an older code base. Say you have like a 10, 12-year-old code base that hasn't been decommissioned yet. It's just been up and running ever since, and they want to make a super small update. And the rest of the site uses floats. In this instance, I would kind of continue that same paradigm of the code base. I wouldn't come in and refactor the site entirely to use Flexbox or CSS Grid. I just think there's a little too much potential for there to be fallout from this refactor. In this instance, I'd continue to use Float and have the consistent coding practices followed throughout the code base, even if they are technically outdated or incorrect or wrong. And all about Float, CSS Tricks has a wonderful article kind of displaying the way more in depth, the history of it, how it's used, and a pretty good discussion in the comments as well. So check that out. And then for all new development, I would definitely please use the latest and greatest standards where possible. So in this 2023 instance, Flexbox and CSS Grid. So that's kind of the high level of floats with CSS and web page positioning. Thanks for listening. Bye.